Bugs crashing your pack's party? Whether they've got paws or sneakers, your pack deserves a home that's protected from pests. That's where Wondercide comes in. Plant-powered protection made with steam-distilled natural essential oils that actually work. It kills and repels fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, and ants without questionable ingredients or overpowering smells. Safe to use around kids and pets when used as directed, lab-proven to work fast, and proudly made in the USA. We offer sprays for pets, people, homes, and yards. Plus, spot-on treatments, collars, and even shampoos. Whatever your pack needs, we've got it covered. Founded by a pet parent looking for a better way to protect her dog Luna, Wondercide's now protected over 21 million lives and counting. You might have even seen us on Shark Tank. Go to Wondercide.com and use code WONDER20 for 20% off your first order. That's WONDER20 at Wondercide.com. Wondercide. Protect your pack with plant-powered Wondercide today.
The Projection Booth podcast is sponsored by Scarecrow Video. Try out Scarecrow's rent-by-mail service. Choose from over 150,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door. Visit scarecrow.com today.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Láska, to je nemoc zlá. Každý na ní svůj lék má. Poslechněte, jak jsem na to od lesa šel já.
Dobrý den.
Dobrý den.
Je doma Indra?
Není. Šla na procházku s chlapcem.
A?
Jak můžeš bejt tak krutá? Co pak nemáš kouska citu v těle?
Brácha. Mami, brácha je mrtvej. Brácha se nehejbá. Tati, vážně.
Tu kytáru jsem koupil kvůli tobě. A dal jsem za ní celý tátův plán.
To je pejsek?
To je belblo.
Ta dávno ještě byla ve výrobě. A já už věděl,
A komu tím prospějete, co?
ti budu hrát.
Vypni to! Jdu k tobě do Pelíšku.
To ještě rostla v javorovém lese. A jenom vítr na to dřevo hrál. A já už tnu, jestli někdy snese žár, který ve mně denně narůstá.
Mami, brácha je mrtvej. Nejdu. Má hlavu v troubě a tráví se.
V naší elektrické troubě.
S tou kytárou teď stojím před tvým domem. Měj soucit aspoň tomu javoru. Jen kvůli tobě přestal býti stromem. Tak už nás oba pozvi nahoru.
Nikdy!
Pozvi nahoru.
Nebo navždy.
Pozvi nahoru.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Join me once again is Mr. Rob St. Mary.
I give the Bolsheviks a year. 2 at the most.
Also back in the booth is Mr. Philip Marinello.
You said we'd always choose dads together.
We are kicking off Czechtember 2025 with Cosy Dens. However, there's no fiddle faddle here. Also known as Pelíšky, it is based on a book called, why do I do this to myself, guys? It's based on a book called Hovno Hoří, which translates as the very simple title, Shit on Fire. Directed by Jan Hřebejk and written by Petr Jarchovský, the film is a bittersweet coming-of-age tale set in the months from Christmas 1967 up to the 1968 Prague Spring, which, if you weren't paying attention, that was January 5th, 1968. We will be spoiling this film as we go along, so if you don't want anything ruined, turn off the podcast and come on back after you've seen the film. We will still be here. So, Rob, you were actually the one who brought this film to my attention. When did you first see it, and what did you think when you first saw it?
It was about 2 years ago, around this time of year, so August, September. And I have a friend of mine who's from Detroit, and I decided to go visit him in Prague. He always had this, hey, anyone wants to come visit? I got an extra bedroom. I was like, I raised my hand. So I got to spend 10 days in Prague. It was lovely, and just had a really wonderful time there. And as part of that, my friend Rick was showing me some movies. He's watched some Czech film. He's an American. He doesn't speak the language. He knows the culture. He traveled there when he was a kid. He's got friends and stuff like that. And he went there to go work with an artist originally who's pretty well known. But anyway, so we closely watched Trains, which I believe I had seen before, and I think you've done on the show. And then he showed me this movie. Now, what was funny is when he showed me this movie, the next day we went to go visit some of his friends, and they're like, why are you showing him a Christmas movie? They're like, that's like the Prague National Christmas movie. Like, it's August. What the hell are you doing? And so because of the Christmas themes, as we get into it, and if you get a chance to see it, you'll understand why that is, because half the film takes place in Christmas time. And so this has become like looking at Letterboxd. I'm on Letterboxd now, and looked at the reviews for this, and most of them are in Czech, but there's those who put an English review in who are either Americans or they have some tie to the English-speaking world. And they say, yeah, this is just a holiday classic. Family gets together and watches this, which is really interesting when you consider that the movie kind of jokes about suicide 3 times. To which my friend Rick would say, you know what? The Czech, they have a really dark sense of humor. And they do. But in a way, this one is kind of light. And I really enjoyed it, and I thought, hey, I don't know if you know this movie. Maybe you should do it for your Czech series.
And Philip, was this a new one for you?
Yeah, this was absolutely a new one. I was telling you before I recorded, as a long-time projection booth listener, I have added many Czech films to my watch list over the years, but I've never watched along. Some are harder to find than others, but I just never had before. So when you're like, hey, this is what we're doing, I went into it relatively blind. I knew that it was about families over a holiday, but that's about it. And I loved it. This was quite a discovery.
This was also a new one for me. And yeah, I'm glad that you brought this to my attention, Rob. I really was not familiar with the writer, not familiar with the director. They, I think, had paired up a few times and also adapted another one of the author's stories, I want to say, for an earlier film. I now need to go back and see some of these other things, but I can see why this is a holiday classic, not just because it's set at the holiday time, right at this very critical moment, but also it reminds me a lot of A Christmas Story. It reminds me of a whole bunch of vignettes strung together. We don't have a narrator. We don't have that, what was it, the guy's name, the Gene Shepard that did those? I can't remember. It's been a minute since I've seen A Christmas Story, but I used to watch that every Christmas pretty religiously, and I can see watching a movie like this because it has that same flavor of dysfunction amongst a family. But with this one, you've got a few families and just seeing the dysfunction amongst them and how everyone interacts or doesn't interact, who hates each other, who gets along, how things change, alliances move, because not only do you have the family aspect, but then you've got the political aspect as well. Who's going to come out on top? Who's on the bottom? Like you said, I give the Bolsheviks 1 year, maybe 2 tops. And this is right before the tanks roll in. And we actually have the scenes of not necessarily seeing the tanks, but hearing the air raid sirens and all these things. And just shit gets real at the end of this. And yeah, it's a real eye-opener for me.
And Merry Christmas. God bless us, everyone.
The thing is, there is a narrator. There's a little bit at the beginning and the end. If I take it, it's the kid. And like I said, I have a problem with the names of the characters. I just say that the one boy who's the boy in the communist family who in the very first scene is trying to hang himself.
Our protagonist.
Yeah. And so you get the feeling that everything is viewed through his lens. And because he's, I was almost 16 when this happened. And that really, you only get him voiceovering in the very beginning and the very end. That's it. There's not all this commentary through the rest. And then there's really only one other scene that I can think of off the top of my head where we get his interiority, where this is what he's feeling or thinking in the moment.
Oh, yes. Oh, God. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I kind of like that because one of the things that we often talk about is, and voiceover can be good. I'm a big fan of, and I know we've debated this, and go back and listen to the Blade Runner episode. I really like the voiceover in Blade Runner, but a lot of times a voiceover in a movie is a crutch. It's, I don't know exactly what to do, so we're going to tie it all together with a voiceover.
Just to clarify, I was not the one who doesn't like the voiceover in Blade Runner. So it was our third person who I believe doesn't like that. So I'm with you, sushi, cold fish. That's what my wife always calls me. That's a classic.
The other thing that's interesting in here, and I don't know if, I think Mike, obviously you may have a little historical background. Philip, I'm not sure about your historical background. I don't know how much you need to know about Czechoslovakia in this period.
Yeah, I don't think you need to, yeah.
No,
or the Prague Spring. I think it adds. There's a scene later I'll talk about that it really adds if you get it. But as long as you understand they're under communism, they're under socialism, that's really all I think you really need to know. I don't think it really goes that far in depth. And of course, the audience, they're expecting you're going to bring that anyway. Yeah.
At first blush, too, I mentioned A Christmas Story. The other thing this really reminded me of was Better Off Dead, with that suicide attempt at the beginning, or maybe even a little bit of Harold and Maude when he's laying in bed and his sister's coming in, like lifting his arm up and it keeps flopping down. And then he eventually sneaks up on her and scares her half to death. But yeah, it's got that great dark humor that I love so much.
It was so funny. Like, I can see why this would be a regular, and if there was a good addition around. I don't know if I'd watch this every year, but I'd watch this. This would be such a fun movie to have people who would be like, hey, let me introduce you to something. Because I'm sure, like in Letterboxd, only not that many people have seen it.
I was really confused when it came to the name of this movie being called Cosy Dens, because it's actually an English title. I did not know that, because cozy in this case is spelled C-O-S-Y. So we've got the English spelling of cozy. So for me as an American, I'm like, oh, cozy's C-O-Z-Y. So when I see Cosy Dens, I'm just like, oh, Cosy Dens, like putting an accent on it.
I thought it was a foreign title too. I was like, all right, whatever. I'm not sure what this means, but okay.
I like Shit on Fire. Shit on Fire would be good. I think maybe that would cross over. Be like, ooh, Shit on Fire. What's that all about?
Fire. Yeah, well, sign me up for that movie. 2 tickets, please.
But when you talk about Cosy Dens, it makes sense because most of it takes place in one building. I don't want to call them capitalists so much, but the anti-communist family lives at the top and they have more. And then there's the guy who's bought in his family, who's where the narrator comes from, and he lives in the middle. And then in the bottom floor, I believe, if I'm remembering the architecture of the building, the bottom floor is the sister of the communist. And she's the single mom teacher at the school where all the kids go. If you look at it, it's 3 little animal dens. And that's how I looked at it, is these are our little worlds, and we build our little worlds. And the thing that I find interesting is the crossover between the worlds that happen from time to time. Obviously, they all become interlinked by the end. And also the fact that there's certain things, it doesn't matter what strata you're in. It doesn't matter if you're communist, if you're not, especially those guys, the fathers in those 2 households, they both have a problem with their kid. And they think that they're like leading to the downfall of society because this one's got a Mick Jagger poster and the other one wants to call dumpling something else and is dating, a hippie boyfriend.
God, that was funny.
Oh, the speech that he gives is so good.
And there's a lot of really like beautiful set pieces in here in the way that they're written. And then the crossover between the three, because it's like they're each having a Christmas meal and they cut back between the three of them and what's going on. And then what's going on within each one. There's certain dynamics depending. And that's why I really loved it is I'm just like, it's just really well done. It's like really well written and acted and directed. And so for me, it just really comes together really nicely.
Yeah. The relationships, like everything felt so like universal. Like you can show anybody this. It's not, I don't know, like 10 and up. Like it's pretty, there's a very small amount of profanity, but there's the full spectrum of life. Like you've got kids, you've got parents, you've got middle age, like all the single mom stuff, like hilarious and heartbreaking. Her trying over and over to find somebody, either finding weirdos or being sabotaged by her son. Like that scene where he puts on the record player, like that killed me. But it's also, it's funny, but it's also really sad. And it's sad for everybody involved. Like this woman is trying to find stability for her and her son. And in that scene, that guy was trying, like not a great guy, but just all the humanity was bare. And you've got the love triangle with the young people. And you've got, as a movie with movies featured well in it, the cinema that he has, that the whole like square of people come out to watch him project on the sheet. There were so many beautiful and universal moments in this. I feel like this be watchable at any time. Obviously, it's a great Christmas movie, but this is immensely watchable, I think, at any time.
The whole influence of the West with the, like you said, the Mick Jagger poster, all the needle drops in this, it's got a fantastic soundtrack. And that I found pretty easy. There's a website called, I think it's Supraphone, and that's usually where I go when I want to buy music from some of these movies, which is great and pretty reasonably priced too, as long as I'm figuring out my international exchange rate. Okay. And it's interesting. I mentioned how these guys had worked together before, the writer, director, and then even the novelist, who was alive at the time that this was made. The novelist was. The three of them, I don't know how many times they worked together, but they had worked together on a film from 93 called Sakali Leta, and that is a musical comedy. So it's in the 50s and just the changing face of the times with the whole rock and roll thing. And yeah, the needle drops in this and all of the musical moments in this are just fantastic and some great songs. I really appreciated that they were not just using Western songs that had made it through the Iron Curtain, that these were actual real people from the time. This was almost a little American Graffiti-esque when it came to the soundtrack.
And this is where, if you understand a little bit of history, it's helpful, is that, you know, Czechoslovakia was kind of left alone. It had a little bit of openness. It could run its own affairs as long. It could go so far, but not too far. And that's what happened with the Prague Spring. Was it was finally like Russia was like, nope, y'all gone too far. And then that's why they rolled the tanks in. So the fact that it is a little bit looser and hipper and feels a little more quote unquote West than maybe what you might be used to for living under communist movies from the East, I think it gives a perspective for Americans who don't understand or maybe would like to learn more. Not to say it's a documentary. There's historical aspects in there. It's nice.
Yeah, I think American Graffiti is actually a really great parallel for it, where it's like, it's a place and time and then just people bumping into each other, living life, like vignettes. Like, and a movie like that really is timeless. Each person has their own arc and many of them are fulfilling, but there's just really great lines. I don't know how accurate the subtitles were that I saw, but I laughed several times. Like good, well-written jokes and really good delivery.
That's a good parallel I hadn't thought of, because in a way, American Graffiti is using Vietnam as the catastrophe that's going to pull people apart.
Yeah, it's like the change in time and how the change in culture also impacts people going through life.
And that's really what the Prague Spring ended up doing, was it ended up being, after that, clamped down, and you have to get till 1989, the early 90s, before all of this finally breaks apart and they get back to where they were in that period right before this. So there's like a 20-year period of darkness that kind of follows right after this. So in a way, like you were saying, that's very astute. It makes a lot of sense in that way to read it that way.
Yeah, probably we're not playing John Wayne movies in public during that time.
No, and when it comes to the Czechness of it, I mean, there are definitely some very Czech things in here. The whole thing with the carp in the bathtub. I remember watching The Cremator, and I was just like, what is this thing? Why is Copper Kingle like going out and getting this pike? Pike. I was thinking of Psycho Pike.
You've been infected.
I've been infected by the pikes.
We've gone from Psycho Pike to Christmas carp. So there you go.
And yeah, he had this pike in his bathtub, and I was just like, what is this whole thing? It's it's the Christmas meal. And then I like this whole thing. There's like a few jokes that play into this whole thing of, is it an uncle, like the father and the uncle that are?
It's the two brothers.
The two brothers. Okay, yeah. So he is
their
an uncle,
back and forth was hilarious. When we first saw the fish, I was like, is he hallucinating? What is this? I am not a Czech aficionado, and I was like, oh, is he like having a hallucination? Did he pass out underwater? Is this fish gonna talk? Like, I had no idea what was happening.
I didn't know that either, like I said, until I watched the movie. And then like I said, my friend Rick, who lives in Czech Republic, explained to me, he goes, it's a Christmas tradition. It's an old Christmas tradition. And what it was is they would catch a pike. Now, if you know anything about pike.
A carp.
Yes, pike. Yeah, carp. Pikes and carps are often bottom feeders anyway. So anyway, they take the carp and they put it in the bathtub for a few days. Now, the reason for this is that it's supposed to clean out the fish, because usually they're gritty because they're down there feeding among the muck. So they say it helps it to taste better. So that's
get in a little bath before you eat.
Yeah. Inside and out.
But the brothers, so the one is the father of the narrator, who is the guy who's, I guess he's a commissar or something. He's something in the Communist Party is what you get. And his brother, who doesn't agree with him, just are at each other. So like the brother and the mother that comes over, so the grandmother of the boy, and he also has a little sister. So like the whole family. And then it's like the two men in the room, they're just at each other. They're just constantly trying to one up some. Oh, I know this and I know that. Oh, do you? And then it's, oh, you can't do this. And it's just ridiculous. And the grandmother is like, oh God, come on guys, don't do this.
Yeah. And they get to do this whole thing about holding their breath. And then that ends up with him in that bathtub, holding his breath underwater because he would be cheating otherwise, seeing that carp. And then it's the whole thing of, if that carp is here, what were we just eating? And then finding out that the dad is too chicken to kill the carp.
Well, and I also love the payoff of like bickering, like sibling rivalry of the original bet was, hey, like up to 60 seconds, I owe you. If you can hold your breath for over a minute, like I'll pay you whatever per second. And after the whole thing is like, 61 seconds, I owe you one. So like he put him through this whole ordeal and then like he gave him like the smallest amount possible. I thought that was hilarious.
All these characters are very, at times you're like, oh God, really got to be that way. But that father character, I really love him because he's such a believer. Like he wants to believe, like the whole scene with the glasses. So he gives the wife this box full of unbreakable glasses. And he's like, we've done it.
He is so all about that technology that we have here in Europe. Fuck those Americans.
Yeah, we've done it. We're one up on them. We've made these unbreakable glasses. And the kid throws it and it shatters because, of course, they're unbreakable to a point. But anyway, and then later in the movie, there's a whole thing with the spoons, which is the poster art for the movie. There are these spoons, and he gives everyone these spoons, and he says, oh, this is great socialist technology. And they put the spoon in their tea or their coffee, and it just like disintegrates and melts. And that's what, in the end, there's this, his arc is, it's just, he wants to believe in this. He wants to say, it may not be a perfect system, but I believe in it. I care about it. And I want my kids to grow up in it, and I want good things out of it. And so he's bought in. He's really bought in. And there's a part of me that just, I know he's a little diluted, but I just want to give him a hug. I'm like, it's all right, dude. I can see you're a good guy.
Yeah, like you said, these characters are they're like little thumbnails of these people, but you feel like you know them so well by the end of this. And you just, like you said, you want to give them a hug. You love all of these guys, even the cantankerous guy who loves those dumplings so much. But when they're explaining gnocchi and he's just getting so mad every time she says gnocchi.
Furious.
And with him too, and you get the feeling with all of them that it's like they've all been through something. And especially him, like when he's pushed far enough, he'll fucking tell you, I was in a camp. Like the fucking Nazis tortured me.
I wrote that line down. He says, I was interrogated by the Nazis. You can't beat me with something like gnocchi. And that's all the layers of good cinema. That's really funny. It's the climax of the scene. But like Rob, you're saying, that belies like a very deep, like human truth and like his pain in that moment.
And that's really what this is. If you understand it, it's like these people in this period are dealing with the aftermath of World War II, and they're dealing with the aftermath of what came with Soviet occupation. And it's coming out in these twisted ways because they can't deal with it straight ahead. They're stuck, so they have to figure out a way, like the birds, like that last image in the film, like the birds in the little bird cage. It really is that. They're just stuck and trying to make the best out of whatever the hell they got to deal with.
There's that line about we had to have this grit, this spirit, otherwise we would have been Germanified like forever ago. And through watching so many of these Czech films, it's yeah, they've had problems for centuries. It's not just over the last 80, 90 years. It has gone on for so long. Like the Czech language itself almost perished from the earth because of all of these other countries that were infringing on them, be it Austria, be it Germany, wherever. Even the term Czechoslovakia is three things all being forced together. They didn't want to be forced together. And eventually they broke apart. At least they didn't have the whole Bosnia-Herzegovina kind of thing where they're fighting each other. I think the breakup was a lot more amenable than that. But yeah, these folks have been through the shit all the time. And yeah, the one guy, tortured by the Nazis, and then he's going to go from the frying pan into the fire with the communists in just a few days. Like we watching this film, whether you know it or not, whether you do have that knowledge of the Prague Spring or not, when it happens, you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, this doesn't sound like it's very good at all. And you get those things like the communist who's presenting to the kids in the classroom. He's just like, yeah, we do a lot of paperwork. Sounds like you have a fascinating life there, sir.
But not only that, he then goes in to tell this story about how to the kids, he's like, oh, we heard there was a spy and he was running on a motorcycle. He had a leather backpack and we waited for him and we shot him.
So heroic.
But then there was another guy on a motorcycle with a leather backpack. So we had to shoot him too because we didn't know which one was the spy. So that kind of thing just shows you this kind of callousness, this kind of, we're following orders. Maybe we didn't get it right, and he's the last one. He's the last one who comes to dinner for the single mom teacher and her son. And they toss him out.
Very funny, very dark, because like he's telling a group of, I don't know, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, we definitely at least killed one guy who was just a guy out in the countryside.
I was thinking about Diamonds in the Night because you were talking about the Germanification and all of that stuff and the Sudetenland, the Nazi takeover. And I think the links are on that episode. But I talked about the museum that I went to when I was in Prague to the Heartbreak terror, the memory of the Heartbreak terror in Operation Anthropoid, which were the Czech partisans who killed the number 3 Nazi in the whole system, he was like the governor of that area. And he was a right bastard. Reinhard Heydrich, depending on the biographies you read, was so into it, like he scared Hitler. Like Hitler's like, oof, that guy. And he was like one of the architects of the final solution, the extermination camps and all that stuff. He was right. Oof. So the Czech partisans killed him, and then there was horrible reprisals that came. They came and took out like a whole village, like several thousand people, for taking him out. And so just remember, like when you're watching this, it's like this is the kind of shit these people lived through, these characters, and the kind of darkness. So you can understand why and this is what my friend Rick would say, who lives there. He goes, that's why they have this dark sensibility. That's why they have this dark sense of humor, is because they've been through just fucking horrible suffering in the 20th century.
But in among that, I don't think we've said this yet. The protagonist at the very beginning, his suicide attempt is not because of existential despair. It's because he's in love with his neighbor who is not returning his affections. And that's the heart of the movie that sets it off, that like we can all get behind and understand. Like immediately he's looking at his neighbor and she even comes by and, what are you doing?
Helps him out of the rubble. Yeah. Out of the rubble of the little pagoda or whatever they got back there, the gazebo that collapses in on him a little bit.
Not sturdy enough for a child to hang themselves on, thankfully.
And that his dad does that at the end and has very similar results too. And I think,
and that was the fascinating parallel. So like the main kid being into his neighbor and just failing, and 2 different suicide attempts for unrequited love. But then his father, the suicide attempts after all the stuff we're talking about, he realizes, oh, this is all happening. The world is the bad. So like he goes to do it for a completely different reason, but also fails. So all these different layers of humanity and history on top of each other. And it turned out just incredibly well.
I thought that his on the end was an unrequited love for the ideology.
There you go. That's beautiful.
That he was so upset that the Russians came in. He was like he was perfectly happy being a socialist in the way that socialism was. But the fact that the Russians had to come in and impose on top, it was like, that was a fucking bridge too far. He was like, no.
Too much for one man to take.
But his son doesn't die. He collapses the entire.
Yes, because he's a grown man. Yeah.
His brother comes and helps him dust him off out of the rubble.
So his father and his brother, that was a great relationship, as well as so many of them. I loved how the film showed in the Cosy Dens, like something we often don't have as much anymore, like physical proximity with affection and intertwinement with people who you have strong ideological disagreements on. Like now, recording this in 2025, it's a lot harder to go through the holidays with people who are drastically ideologically different than you. But that was really refreshing to see, even though they rib each other, they harass each other, they yell at each other, whatever, but they're family. And that was a nice thing to see.
Well, not only are they family, but they become like the whole building becomes family by the end, because the single mom who's constantly looking for guys, she falls for the old thing where it's like, you'll find love when you stop looking for it kind of thing. So she ends up with the man up on the top floor who sadly becomes a widower because his wife dies.
Yeah, the girl who does not return the protagonist's love. Her mother dies and then her father marries But that first suitor, I was cracking up. Like the kid
that was
harassing him the whole time.
Comrade teacher, as I think he's referred to as comrade teacher.
I could not believe, I'm sure that this is thinking about the process of writing this and shooting this. I just thought I came with the offer of quality sex, bamboo chopping, the milk and water position, long hours of homework, all in vain. Like he just wanted to get a little bit, and this kid would not let him. And just his frustration, the milk and water, whatever, like I was dying.
It's funny, the lead up too, where the little boy sitting at the table and he's playing with his erector set or whatever it is that he's playing with there, screwing these little things again. And he's watching this guy try to mac on his mom with the paperweight. He's looking at her, gazing at her and paperweight and all this stuff. And just trying to, if the kid wasn't there, I'm sure everything would have been very successful. Everything seemed, it was going well. They had a little dance. They had a little music. They had a little danger because he's got that box which to me reminded me of an e-meter, like the Scientology. But he's like holding on to these cans. He's like, all right, hit the button. And it's
the kid let him go for a while too.
Yeah. He's like zapping him.
Yes.
You can tell the mother's frustrated too. It's not just comrade teacher that wants to get laid. Like, mom's, I'd like to get laid too.
So is it okay that we do it on Christmas?
Takes the boy back to his room and it's, you keep messing around, I'm going to take your microscope away from you, which was his Christmas gift. Of course, his revenge, as you said, was a massively loud needle drop.
Yeah, I love the scene with the electricity. Speaking of cultural things, I want to know that whole story of the very harsh dad, the gnocchi dad, why he's pouring that, it looks like pewter or something into water. It almost seems like a decoration or like even fortune telling, because when he looks at it, then he says his line about the Bolsheviks again, because that's like his refrain.
I think that is a kind of divination. It may be a cultural thing, I don't know, but basically he's pouring, which looks like silver or metal, into a bowl of cold water, and it sizzles, and then he pulls this weird pattern out and he looks at it. What is it telling you? I think is what the mother says to him. So to me, I feel like that's like in line with, I don't know, like reading tea leaves or something, you know?
That's what it felt like, yeah. But at the same time, just maybe because it was Christmas, it reminded me of like a snowflake or something. So I'm like, is this what you do at Christmas time to make a decoration?
Well, he was so practical too. Like it was an odd thing because he was such this like intense guy. And then they had that scene did come out of the blue a little bit for him.
He's a very intense guy. And that whole scene of him and his family when his wife is doing the Lord's Prayer and he's got that nationalistic song on. I don't know if that was the Czech national anthem. I wanted to Shazam that to see what was going on there. And especially the daughter has this very pained look on her face and the mother's just like, it's okay. Kind of like giving her the little looks like, it'll be all right. It'll be okay. The family dynamic with them, with all of these families, but just the tension, and especially that little thing that happens when he goes to try to sit down and she hasn't sat down yet. And he says, would you sit down first so I can follow decorum, basically? And then she sits down, then he gets to sit down, and it's just so tense. Everything with that family gets really tense a lot.
And like I say, I didn't know my grandfather. He died when I was 2, but my mom's from Scotland and my grandfather lived through the Blitz and was sunk by the Germans at least twice, maybe 3 times while in the Merchant Navy and in Scotland. And he was very like proper by the rules. My mom would say if I looked at my dad wrong, like at the table, he would just lean over and just smack me out of the blue.
Oh, jeez.
Like he was just fucking angry. And there's just like, when you go through that kind of trauma and you don't know how to deal with it right, it comes out like that. It comes out as just the scene that comes later where like on Christmas, they're being loud downstairs. So he comes down and starts yelling
screaming in the hallway at each other.
Yeah. He's fucking yelling at each other and he's
cursing and throwing shoes at each other. Yeah.
And over
and
what?
Says, I hope you have another heart attack.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Vicious.
And it's like over what? It's like you could be like, hey dude, can you turn it down a little bit? His
music was a little bit loud.
Yeah. It's
heart. They're celebrating.
Yeah. And it's like, it didn't have to escalate that far, that fast, but those kind of guys who survive that kind of trauma sometimes have that kind of way of reacting where it's just shut it down fucking now.
I was with this movie hardcore as I'm watching it, but the scene that you made mention of a little bit earlier on, it happens around, I think maybe the change from the first act to the second act, where we do get into our main character's head, Michelle, I think it is, or Michael, Michel, so there's no A in there. So there's somebody named Michael. I don't know how you pronounce that.
He's the main character.
He's the main character, and he is part of that love triangle that we mentioned, where you have that very hip dude, and that hip dude, they're at like I don't know if it's the post office or what, but he gets this box and he shows off these brand new slick shoes that he's got early on in the movie. And they're these pointy boots, these like rock and roll boots, right? And our main character starts making fun of him, like, oh, how freaking girly these boots are. They look terrible. And the girl's better than your shoes. And he's really ashamed of these clunky shoes that he's got. So here we are, Christmas morning kind of thing, waiting for that Red Ryder BB gun, or in this case, a crossbow, which was amazing that they gave a crossbow as a gift.
To that little girl, to his sister.
To the little girl. It was amazing. And here's the son. Here's our main character opening up the Christmas present. He opens it up, and there's those fucking boots. And he's just, oh, this is great. And the dad's just like, oh, I love you, son. And they have this wonderful moment. Looks are exchanged. Everyone's warm and happy. And then cut. And you get, here's what's actually in the package. And it's these.
Yeah, that got me, man.
Oh, it was so good.
It totally got me. It totally got me because the rest of the movie, we haven't had that. That is the only time that we have that in the movie. And so when it hits, you're like, oh, God. It's such a laugh and it's gutting at the same time.
Because the cool kid, like, he's not like a crummy guy. So it's not like we are on the protagonist's side, but it's not like, oh, this guy, he ran him off the road a little bit, but that's also, they were being rivals a little bit for her affection. So he never like crosses any lines or whatever. But we do want this kid to do well. And when that scene, I was like, yeah, like nice work. And then the cut to, oh no, not these cool shoes.
Here's these brown socks and these brown clunky boots that I got. And instead of his dad just being like starting to sing a rock and roll song.
And his dad's like, isn't that great?
Yeah, he gives the same words, but such a different inflection.
The cool kid has his family's in the States. It seems like they maybe sent him back to the home country for school or something, or to be near grandma. He's the one who also has the film projector. So he's the one projecting the movies on a bed sheet, and the neighbors come out and watch. And is it Jean Gabin? Is that who it is?
I think it is.
Who was in The Grand Illusion. So the kid, Michel, he's the one who says, oh, yeah, he uses a homophobic slur to say that. And he looks like your boyfriend. He goes, oh, yeah, because he's just like him. So there becomes this kind of making fun of each other rivalry thing, which leads to the poster.
I know that it's Mick Jagger, but he so looked like the main character from Velvet Goldmine.
Because it's very psychedelic colors, Mick Jagger. He tacks it up on his dad's communist corkboard in the house with all the information and the weekly dinner schedule, of course, because everything's very regimented.
It was typed out, yeah.
So he tacks up the Mick Jagger poster as "fuck you" to dad.
The very genuine and very hilarious line, I also wrote that down. He said, I wanted to pass this bulletin board down to you, you bastard. Like this is the order. I was hoping that you would carry on our traditions of posting the family schedule, but apparently it's not good. Oh man.
It's not good enough for you, son. You gotta be a rebel and tack this poster up on my beloved bulletin board.
And that was funny too, because when he tore it up, he's like, it's whatever. This is from this guy who like is my friend, but I'm trying to get one over on him anyway. So that was also great. I loved the moment where they were playing the John Wayne movie North to Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Mikhail's mom comes in, and just a very simple line delivery of, I haven't been to the cinema in 15 years. I haven't seen a movie. And it's just, as a movie lover, like, that really landed with me. Because, like, the cinema is magic. They're in such a hard time and going, like, I remember what it was like to go to a movie. That was devastating. Imagine going 15 years without seeing a movie.
The only other person I can think of that did that, he may have watched it on TV, but it was a little bit of trivia on our Seconds episode, that in the movie Seconds, Rock Hudson plays a character called Wilson. And Brian Wilson was so out of it when he saw that in the late 60s in the theater that he thought it was about him. And he was so paranoid that he never saw another movie in the theater, they said, until E.T. Because, of course, he had that whole period in there where he was a little off. So next movie he saw in the theater was E.T. Allegedly. This is the story there.
This movie is just filled with one great scene after another. While we're talking about this, I've got the movie up in the background and I'm just like, yep, this was great. Yep, this is great. And they all run together. Like we're doing like a greatest hits as we're talking about this, but they're all of these just amazing things that are just strung together and really play well with one another. It builds and it wanes and waxes and wanes through this whole thing. And it is just so freaking funny and sad and melancholy and just so many fascinating things that are going on here.
How about the magician suitor? That was great.
I was about to say, that's so funny. I was just about to say, yeah, when they get to the mom doing those dates and yeah, you get that guy in there with that amazing hair.
Oh my God.
He looks like a Kmart discount version of Salvador Dali.
I can see
he's got this mustache.
Kind of greasy stranglery. Oh, he was, what did he say? He had a great line, about being lonely because he's a performance artist or whatever. Like he chooses it, but it's lonely and it's hard. Like he makes it out to be like he's sacrificing for this great thing. And he pulls some ping pong balls out of his mouth and he legitimately scares her when he pulls out the fake snake. And she screams. She does like a Sarah Palmer type scream when that snake comes out. It was just, again, so many good parts.
I am so glad you brought this to us, Rob. This was such a delight watching this.
How about the scene where the widower walks into the classroom when they're talking about the students using profanity?
And she's got their version of the F word on the board.
And he just looks at it and she goes to stand in front of it because she's got a room full of all these educators and it's just that word written on the board in their language. And he looks at it really perplexed and she moves her body in front of it. Again, that's everybody gets that. That will be funny to anyone who you show this to.
The other thing that it becomes that you have these families and these characters are so connected, where I was talking about the commissar or whatever, the narrator's dad, who's the socialist. And the Christmas dinner, this is the second Christmas, I guess. Or is it? No, it's right before the Prague Spring.
Yeah, it might be New Year's dinner.
No, it's the wedding. It's the wedding dinner. The teacher, the auntie of his, gets married to the guy upstairs who's I was tortured by the Nazis. So he's feeling depressed because the girl, he's still pining for the girl who's now literally a cousin now and by marriage. So he's still pining for her. He's really upset. Can't really show it or whatever. He decides to stick his head in the oven.
Yeah, he gets hammered on the gift wine.
Yeah, suicide, another suicide joke. Sticks his head in the oven. And the man, because they're upstairs in his place, and he's in the electric oven? So they pull him out, and he ends up having heat stroke, and he has to go to the hospital. But when they first pull him out, his dad faints. His dad is so overcome by the fact that his son tried to kill himself, because he obviously didn't know about the first one, or he was like, whatever, you're fine. But this one really fucked him up. So he ends up fainting. And that, to me, really shows, yeah, I give my son a lot of shit, but I give him a lot of shit because this is the attitude that I grew up in at times with my folks, especially my mom, where it was just I care about you. I want you to do good things. I want you to be on the right path.
Be tough for the tough world and all that.
In my mom's case, it's pack 2 suitcases. We're leaving and we're going to the States. You got to be on it. So just the fact that he falls over and faints and then he's like, oh, great. He talks on the phone to the hospital. He's going to be okay. They're going to keep him a day or two. But it's a simple thing, but it really shows that connection.
It was also very darkly funny, that scene when they hang up, they all start laughing about how silly he was for how poor of a suicide attempt that was. They're laughing so hard. What a goofy little kid. He tried to do it this way. And they're all four of them are laughing at his suicide attempt.
And then about 10 minutes later, he's on the end of the rope following.
And his brother's doing the same thing for him. It's like, yeah, come on, brother.
I think about this, and there was something recently with Winona Ryder that I read where she was talking about Heathers and how people were like incensed by the teenage suicide stuff in Heathers. And it was a different time. Like, you could have those kind of jokes.
Even in the old, this is just a silly one off aside. I remember not too long ago, what was it the old version of? I think it was like the old version of You Got Mail, like The Shop Around the Corner, which I think also was a Christmas movie. There was a big old suicide attempt in that. And I was like, whoa, it's dark for studio Hollywood. But I mean, this is probably the Christmas movie with the most suicide attempts, though.
Well, It's a Wonderful Life. There's our American Christmas movie. It's got a suicide in it. So,
like, integral suicide attempt.
Yeah, you can't cut around that one very easily at all.
Exactly. So what is it with Christmas and suicide? Let's look at that. Christmas and suicide movies.
It happens a lot around Christmas because it's like you're supposed to be happy. And when you're not, it just feels very discordant.
I just find it funny that the Czech national Christmas movie has suicide in it and the American national Christmas movie has suicide in it.
Great double feature.
I've heard that a lot of suicides take place in the spring or I've heard specifically February because it's like you just sludge your way through the holidays and then it's okay, nothing's going to get better. I'm just going to end it now. But I would think, go out on Christmas, ruin everybody's lives.
And that credit card bill comes in and goes, Jesus Christ.
Oh, don't worry, Rob. We're going to make so much money with these tariffs. We're going to all get refund checks. It's going to be great.
I'm just sad I don't live in Michigan anymore where y'all have the 10-cent bottle return. At least I could be making some money. So
in Michigan, you get 10 cents.
10 cents?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You mean you get 5 cents here and 10 cents there? You could round up bottles here and run them out to Michigan for the difference.
That doesn't work.
What do you mean it doesn't work? You get enough bottles together.
Yeah, you overload your inventory and you blow your margins on gasoline. Trust me, it doesn't work.
Hey, you're not talking that Michigan deposit bottle scam again.
No, I'm off that.
Anyway, if anyone thinks we're joking about suicide, we're not. It's a very serious topic. I've had friends who died from it. And there have been times in my life where I've been suicidal. But everything I always say, you can always talk about something in art, and it's all about context.
And again, like you said, that's touched all of our lives in one way or another. And we can see the humanity in that.
And that's what ultimately this movie is about. It's about the humanity. It's about these folks, even if you didn't live through this time and you don't have the historical context, I think you can really understand who these people are and what they're trying to do. Speaking of a historical piece in here, the little mock-up that he makes of the monument to the pilots in World War II.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic.
This was already torn down by then as part of de-Stalinization, but they show you a photo of this thing. And if you ever look up the historical thing as the Stalin Prague Monument, it was a massive granite monument of Stalin and a bunch of workers, and it was made on prison labor. It is horrible history of this thing that was made. As a matter of fact, the guy who designed it, I think it was either the day it was unveiled or right shortly after decided to kill himself because he just didn't feel good about what he was tasked to do by the communists. And the fact that his characters, we're honoring these murderers and these horrible people. Actually, it was blown up in 1963 or something like that as part of de-Stalinization. It was like after Stalin died, they said, oh, Stalin was so awful. Like Khrushchev came in and said, he was terrible, and look at all the stuff that he did. And we got to be honest about how awful that time was.
That monument looks so similar to one that's in Portugal, but rather than all of these like soldier and a farmer and all these things, it's all of these people that would go off to basically colonize other places. And I don't know, but the people who led the tours, let me just say that, out of Portugal, it was just like, yeah, we went to this place, and they have these huge maps where they show like all the expeditions to all these places. I'm like, they're talking about slavery and colonization and all of these horrible things. And they're just like, Like we say obrigado when we mean thank you. And that's why the Japanese people say arigato. They got it from us. And I'm like, oh my God, like the Japanese people hated you guys.
It's funny you bring this up because I just watched Silence, which is the Scorsese movie about the Portuguese priests in Japan.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of the Stalin monument right now, and it is amazing. Like just the scale of it. And it's, under a article called The Monument That Destroyed Its Creator. So, holy shit.
If you ever go, you get a chance to go to Prague, they have some beautiful, beautiful things. One of the things that was lovely because of the Nazis loving the Czech so much and believing they were part of the greater German project, it didn't get bombed all that hard. So there's a lot of beautiful architecture that's still there that other cities didn't have. And they have a lot of beautiful monuments and castles and such. So it's a very beautiful city, Prague.
There's a movie I've been trying to remember through this entire conversation because it also had rock and roll in it. It was from probably a little bit earlier, definitely earlier than this came out in 99. So I was in college, so it was probably late 80s. And I'm thinking it's When Father Was Away on Business. And I want to say there's a whole rock and roll subplot in that, but ironically, it was a lot to do with the Tito-Stalin breakup and just how that affected, I want to say it was Yugoslavia. So I would like to go back now and watch that and see how it compares with Cosy Dens, just because I could see those two things kind of lining up a little bit more, even though one's Czechoslovakia, one's Yugoslavia, but both these countries that were really ravaged by communism, and also countries that produced movies with some really dark humor to them.
There's a couple of movies that I think I've talked to you about over the years about trying to do from the Balkans that I would love to do that definitely got some dark humor working through their trauma. So
we've talked about this before as far as seeing people's trauma on screen and just making that universality of it. Just like you were saying before, Philip, you don't have to know about the Prague Spring to enjoy this film. You don't have to know all of these ins and outs. You don't have to know about Christmas Carp in order to figure this movie out. It is very universal, and it's just great to see something from another country from 26 years ago, and just that speaks to us so loudly today.
It's also crazy 99 was that long ago. When it's here and you say that out loud. Yeah, it's got just over 10,000 Letterboxd log. This is ripe for a Radiance or potentially Criterion, but this would be a great clean it up. I mean, it's got a really good restoration. Put it together, do some interviews, get a commentary. This would be great. This would be a great discovery, in addition to the international canon.
One of the things that I tried to do after I watched this movie and Mike decided he wanted to put on the show was I was trying to coordinate with a friend of my friend, Rick, in Prague, who actually would have been the sister in here of the commissar's daughter, because my friend Rick, his friend Yitka grew up, her dad was part of the party and all of that stuff. And so there was part of me that was hoping we could have an interview with someone who could bring a little history to it and explain this is what this is and why do I like this movie? Why does Czech people like this movie? Let me tell you what it speaks to. But us being three guys who are not from there and not connected to the culture in that way outside of the cultural exports, it's really about families. It's really about understanding who these people are. I especially think of myself at my age. I don't have kids, but I can understand friends of mine who do. I can see my parents. I can see myself. I can see just humanity in general in a lot of these characters, and that's what makes it beautiful.
I didn't fuck up, did I? Did I eliminate this possibility?
What's that?
Of having your Rick's friend on here?
I asked her to do it, and I thought she would be hip to do it, and she's like, it would be nice, but I don't think so. I don't feel like doing it. And I was like, oh, that's too bad.
She didn't want to speak for an entire nation.
The novelist of this, Petr Šabach, he passed away in 2017, I believe. But the director and the adapter, the screenwriter, they're still going strong, still making.
It's like they're still making stuff.
Yeah.
I just looked that up.
Exactly,
yeah.
And they're both working at Barrendorf. So I emailed both of them a couple times to say, "Hey, you want to come on the show and do this stuff?" And never got any responses. It was again only quote unquote 26 years ago, but yeah, they both have been making films for quite a bit, a little while here.
We were talking before we were rolling, and Philip was saying, "Oh, I haven't seen a lot of Czech film." I'm like, usually the place that people come in are Closely Watched Trains, Yuri Menzel because of he won an Oscar, and then Milos Forman because we know the American Forman films, obviously The Cuckoo's Nest and Amadeus, just those at least, and then all the other stuff.
I didn't realize Cremator was Czech. That's very high on my list.
Oh, it's so good.
The thing that's interesting about Czech, and this is film, and this is what I was alluding to earlier about the architecture, is that starting in like the 90s, basically as soon as communism fell, there was a lot of American and European English-speaking productions that went there because it could fill in for any really old European city. You know, it could be Berlin or Vienna or whatever, because Berlin and Vienna don't look like they used to because they got bombed to shit and rebuilt with modern architecture. So it became Czech Republic, and specifically Prague, became a place for a lot of English language production films. So it's always been, especially I'd say in the last 30 years or so, really a hotbed of people coming there to shoot, but also their own productions. And they're usually pretty high quality, like this one. Like I said, it looks as good as something that you would see, you know, an American film.
Yeah, the director of this really started his career right around the time of the Velvet Revolution. I imagine that opened up new filmmaking avenues for both, like you're saying, people coming into the country, but then their own homegrown directors again. And yeah, I think he hopefully didn't have to make a lot of films under that regime and was able to prosper after that, because he's, according to the source of all truth, IMDb, he's directed at least 54 things between TV and movies. More power to him.
And a lot of his stuff is available.
And I don't know if this is connected to any of this at all, but I was just thinking about the fact that out of the Velvet Revolution, at the end of communism in Czechoslovakia, was Václav Havel, and Havel was a poet and a playwright, and he was very much into the Western arts. So he was like he loved Frank Zappa,
yeah.
And he loved the Velvet Underground, and he loved rock and roll music, and all of this stuff. So a lot of these guys came to visit. Like Zappa became like unofficial cultural attaché to Czech Republic until he passed a few years later. But there was always this connection back in that way. And one of the great things, like I say, if you end up getting to Prague, and we can put this link in the show notes, and I think I may have talked about this during when we did Diamonds in the Night, is the Museum of Communism. And in Prague, there's a thing called the Museum of Communism, and it shows you what life was like from 1948 when everything collapsed. Talks about the Prague Spring. It talks about all of the things that happened all the way through to the revolution to today. And it's a great museum. And if anyone goes, and if you have an interest in that and learning more, it'll really give you a sense of what the day-to-day life was like and some of the challenges of living under that regime.
And if you mention that you came from listening to the projection booth, they'll give you a 10% discount on tickets at the door.
Maybe.
Hey, it doesn't hurt to ask.
It doesn't hurt to ask. I heard about it on the projection booth. They're like, oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dobrý den.
All right, we're going to take a break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages. Bring home the all-new The Naked Gun on digital now. See Liam Neeson like you've never before as Frank Drebin Jr. as he leads Police Squad in this outrageous comedy. Also starring the iconic Pam Anderson. Buy the film critics are calling one of the funniest movies of the decade and get nearly an hour of gut-busting extras, including deleted scenes, outtakes, and more. Available at participating retailers. Rated PG-13 from Paramount Pictures. Looking for something superior to streaming? A place with more than 5 times the selection available on all streaming services combined? Check out Scarecrow Video's Rent by Mail service. Select from an unparalleled collection of over 150,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door. Get in on it now at scarecrow.com and rediscover the wonders of physical media.
Jsem Ezra Goodman. A toto je moje dcera Winifred.
A mě říkají limonádový Joe.
A mě? Arizonská pěnice. Tornádo Lou. Umělkyně.
Arizona, to je pravých mužů zóna. Karty, šustí, kulky, psučí, krávici tu plně učí.
Ano, Hogo Fogo. Z 12 zářezy na pažbě svého Deringeru. Hogo Fogo, hledaný policií 5 států.
A zatčený ve Stepson City.
Tu láhev barculatou, tu pestrou vinětu, tu whisky tmavě zlatnou, pije i manitu. Kdo chce se stát tím mužem, ten whisky pije rád a proto všichni může společně zaspívat.
Dovolte, abych vám představil své spolupracovníky. Kojot Kid, Pancho Kid.
Nestojím o vaše kidy.
Já jsem totiž tuplovaný kruťas. A mučeníčko, to je moje potěšeníčko. A proč bych tím šampionem nemohl být já? Doc Badman, majitel po čertech prosperujícího podniku Trigger Whisky Saloonu. Proč?
Jen když je to,
That's right. We'll be back next week with a look at the Aldrich Lipsky comedy Lemonade Joe. Until then, I want to thank my co-hosts, Rob and Philip. So, Rob, what is going on in your world, sir?
Not a whole lot. Like I said, I've just been writing. I've got a couple novels that I've cranked out in the last year.
Just a couple novels. Yeah, nothing too hard. Yeah.
Nothing too difficult.
Yeah.
I don't do anything. It's just me and my cat. This is what happens. And I'm going to be on the show more over the next few months. If you've missed me in the past, I don't know who's missing me, but I'll be back for a couple more episodes coming up over the next year. And yeah, just enjoying myself. And I'll give you the link because I've gotten off of all the social media, but I am on Letterboxd now. So you can look at my silly reviews of movies that I've watched. So
I will be sure to link to your name in the show notes with your Letterboxd link.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. I hope you're doing well.
As long as you send it over to me. Otherwise, I'm not going to go searching for it.
Will do. And also good to be on here with Philip. It's good to talk about carp after talking about pike.
Philip, what's new with you, sir?
You can find me over at The Substance. And Rob, I just found your Letterboxd, followed you there. It's always great when we get people to join the very best social media community. Podcasting over at The Substance. Mike, it's probably about time to have you back again some point. We do a lot of films under our Substantive Cinema banner, but then we also do, like, our brand is The Substance. It's pretty broad. Recently, we've had on New York Times film critic Alyssa Wilkinson talking about her book on Joan Didion and John Wayne. We recently had British-American poet David Gate on his new book of poetry, A Rebellion of Hope. Wide variety of stuff here. We actually just covered our second Abbas Kiarostami movie of the year, and on our first one, The Wind Will Carry Us had not been announced. And we're like, man, it'd be great if they put out The Wind Will Carry Us. The next month they announced it. So then we did a Wind Will Carry Us episode. And at the end of that, we're like, man, it'd be great if Criterion put together a package of the early Kiarostami shorts and documentaries. And then a couple days after we posted that episode, that announcement came, that the return of Eclipse, which I'm so excited for. So we got to figure out with that guest, Marta Georgievich, some may know her as Marta McFly. We've got to plan our hat trick. Like, what are we going to call into being for our next episode? So find me over there. I'm on Letterboxd, and you can find me at The Substance Pod on whatever social medias we're still on.
Thanks again, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Do you want to support physical media and get great movies by mail? Head over to scarecrow.com and try Scarecrow Video's incredible rent by mail service, the largest publicly accessible collection in the world. You'll find films there entirely unavailable elsewhere. Get what you want, when you want it, without the scrolling. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They are all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth take over the world.
Usínám a chtěl bych se vrátit o nějaký ten rok zpátky. Teď zase malým klukem, který si rád hraje, který je s tebou. Zase se nemohu ubránit myšlence vrátit se o nějaký ten rok zpátky. Být zase malým klukem, který si rád hraje, který je s tebou.